southern states. I mean, they have this apprehension that if a delimitation is hurriedly pushed in, they would lose strength, political strength at least, in the parliament.
Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu. These states together, as per the 50% formula, will constitute only 195 seats. Whereas, just UP and Bihar together will have 180. Earlier route for delimitation was linked directly to population. And that itself would have run into trouble with parties from the south who would have objected to this, saying that, look, population cannot be held against us because we were the states that controlled our population. Unlike the north, where population explosion continues even today. One MP is to say, hypothetically, 5 lakh voters or 10 lakh voters. Now that in certain states, because of the difference in population, maybe, it may be 1 MP to 11 lakh or 1 MP to 9 lakh. But it can't be a situation where one state has 1 MP to 20 lakh people and another state has 1 MP to just 6 lakh people, right? So that basic principle of one person, one vote, one value cannot be violated. Say a state like Telangana, which has 17 seats at the moment. Their share from 17 will go up, if you take the 50% formula, to 26 seats. Whereas Uttar Pradesh, which has 80 seats right now, goes up to 120. The difference between Uttar Pradesh and Telangana right now is of 63 seats. That difference goes up to 94 seats.
Hello and welcome to the Federal. The centre hurriedly passed the Women's Reservation Bill, or Nari Shakti Adhiniyam, in 2023, just before the 2024 parliamentary elections. Prime Minister Narendra Modi then had made a fervent appeal to the opposition to display solidarity and pass the historic bill unanimously. The bill ensures 33% reservation for women in Lok Sabha and state assemblies. The bill was passed, but it could not be rolled out. This is because the current law requires delimitation following the fresh census in 2026. Incidentally, the census exercise has begun from today, which is April 1, 2026, and will be concluded in a year, maybe by 2027 mid. Meanwhile, the centre has proposed amendments to Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam, the formal name of the bill, in the current session of the parliament itself, hastening the rollout. To discuss this more, I am joined by my colleague Puneet Yadav, the Federal's political editor, who broke the story this morning. Hello, Puneet. In 2023, the opposition found itself in a bind as they suspected that the centre was pushing through the bill with undue haste, as then the government was keen to attract women voters just before the 2024 parliamentary elections. Now, for the second time, they seem to have been caught, the opposition especially, seem to have been caught on the wrong foot by the government. Your story suggests that the Women's Reservation Bill may be amended, short-circuiting the delimitation process, and opposition isn't thrilled. Can you explain why?
Yeah, thanks, Srini. So there's a difference between what had happened in 2023 and what's happening now. In 2023, the opposition was kind of left flummoxed because the bill was brought in through a special session around the same time that the India bloc was taking shape. And that was a period of 6 months from September 2023 to in the run-up to the 2024 election. That you saw a lot of things being brought in by the government to build a sort of narrative. So there was women's reservation on one end of the spectrum. There was the inauguration of the Ram Mandir in Ayodhya on the other end. And so, it did put the opposition at a disadvantage, is what many in the opposition felt at that point. But what had also happened with the Women's Reservation Bill in 2023 was that the form in which it was brought had no timeline of implementation, because the 2023 law, which is in effect as of now, because the amendments are still to be brought to Parliament, The law in 2023 said that women's reservation can be implemented only after the first census is over following 2026. And based on the first census after 2026, a delimitation commission is set up, which will then carry out the reservation of constituencies for women. And the opposition had said that, that means, because at that point in time, remember, we also did not know when the next census will happen, which was supposed to happen in 2021. It had been delayed due to the pandemic. And so that didn't take place. And so the opposition at that point in time said, fine, you're doing women's reservation, bringing this law for electoral advantage, but please tell us, when is this bill going to be implemented? Because we don't know when the next census will take place. After that census, when the delimitation commission will be set up, how much time it will take place. So everyone knew in 2023 that women's reservation is unlikely to become a reality at least before 2034. That is what the government now wants to change with these amendments by saying there is no requirement for a fresh census after 2026. We will go as per the census figures of 2011. So you're going back to the 2011 census figures and saying that we will have delimitation based on the 2011 figures. And so, the timeline for implementation of women's reservation can be advanced. And that has caused panic within the opposition for two reasons. One, again, look at the situation when this amendment is being brought. You have 5 states going to polls right now. So narrative-wise, the government gets that kind of a pedestal that, look, we are trying to bring in to advance the timeline for implementing women's reservation. The opposition is asking questions because the opposition doesn't want women to get their fair share in parliament and state assemblies. And secondly, by advancing the timeline, it also means that by 2029, you'll be able to roll out women's reservations. So the government already has a sort of pitch ready to appeal to the women voters. And between 2026 and 2029, you have important assembly elections in Uttar Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan, Telangana, whole lot of states where this is going to become an issue that the BJP will try and milk. So that becomes
Yeah.
one problem.
Just hold on before you go further, Puneet. For the benefit of viewers, let's just try to recall what you're saying. What you're essentially saying is the sequencing of this entire process should have been in the following manner. There should have been a census, followed by a delimitation exercise, and then the women's reservation bill should have come. Because the census this time also includes enumeration of the caste. The other thing is the census is a long process. It has started today, but the house listing or HLO, which will happen now, then there's a population enumeration or P, what they call it, will happen. And the provisional results will come somewhere late in 2027. Final report somewhere end of 2028. Compilation and other things may just reach up to 29. By then, the parliament election could have kicked in. So this is the essential sequence which should have been otherwise normally followed, and the government is trying to short circuit that. Is that what you're saying?
Precisely. As per the 2023 Act, this is the sequence that should have been followed. And not just completion of the census, remember, also delimitation, which should have followed from census. So, which again adds at least minimum 6 months more to that timeline. So, if the census was concluding around, the final census was concluding around 2029 January, delimitation would have taken at least 6 more months, whereas your Lok Sabha elections for 2029 would have been happening sometime around April, May, June of 2029. So there was no way under the current law that they could have implemented delimitation. And the opposition had in 2023 warned about this and said that please remove the requirement for delimitation completely and don't link it to the 2026 census, because the basic principle for delimitation, what the delimitation really does is change the number of constituencies. One, because that freeze is getting over in 2026 on delimitation of changing number of seats. So that changes in 2026. Second, the opposition said that you need delimitation to reserve seats for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, because that population may change, in some when you reconfigure the seats, because some seats may have more SCs, some and get reserved for SCs. Those with more STs may get reserved for STs, and others kept general. Whereas with regard to women, you know that their percentage in population is roughly 50% uniformly everywhere. So why do you need to know whether there are women present in the constituency or not to reserve that constituency for women? They're there in every constituency, and they constitute roughly half the population in each constituency. So that is what the opposition had said, that you don't need delimitation. And that is the second problem now that the opposition is facing, aside from what I mentioned earlier and we discussed about the census requirement, because the fear now is that delimitation is being brought in through the back door uh, through the women's reservation bill.
Yeah. So there's another thing which you have mentioned in the story. I mean, the way the proposal has also been brought in seems to be some amount of stealth involved in that. Only a few members of parliament have been approached. You have named two of them there. And then the government is trying to figure out whether they should be doing it. And they also perhaps received some kind of a proposal. Uh, you know, shouldn't the government come out clean and then made a clean proposal, even if it wanted to do, consult opposition leaders, then doing it in this manner?
Certainly, but transparency hasn't really been a strong suit of the government, as we all know. Now, these consultations, I had done a story earlier in March where I had mentioned how informally the Union Parliamentary Affairs Minister, Mr. Kiran Rijiju, had reached out to the Congress President, Mr. Mallikarjun Kharge, with a very wishy-washy kind of a proposal, saying that we want to advance the women's reservation bill timeline, rollout timeline, and we'd like to have these discussions. And right at that point itself, the Congress president had told the government that we're not coming in for these informal discussions. Call an all-party meeting. Let all parties come, be present there. The government should be present there. Please put forth all your proposals on the table. Let us have a discussion. And then you want to bring this amendment to Parliament, we'll all support it, because ultimately the Women's Reservation Bill itself had been passed unanimously. But then the government seems to have not gone for that approach. And Congress President, who's also the leader of opposition in Rajya Sabha, has also written a letter formally asking for an all-party meeting on the women's reservation amendments to be convened by the government after the 29th of April, which is when, the 5 states that are going to polls right now, the polling will conclude for the final phase, which is in Bengal, on 29th of April. So the Congress President had made the suggestion that you call an all-party meeting after 29th of April. We'll all come. Let us have a clear discussion. Instead of having, these standalone informal discussions with one MP from some opposition party and another from some other opposition party, do it transparently. But then the government clearly hasn't gone for that route. They're saying whatever discussions need to be done can be done once the bill is brought to Parliament, because anyway, after introduction of the amendments, the House will have to discuss it. So why do we need any kind of discussions before that? We just need a broad consensus that the opposition is on board supporting an early rollout. And that's the narrative part of it, because if the opposition says that we don't support an early rollout, the BJP can go to town saying, look, these are parties that are against reservation for women.
Yeah. Now let's come to the core issue itself, which is basically really annoying the states, especially the southern states, that is delimitation. I mean, they have this
That's right.
apprehension that if delimitation is hurriedly pushed in, they would lose strength, political strength at least, in the parliament. And that is their concern. Now, one proposal which you mentioned in the copy is that there could be a uniform increase of 50% in each, the state-wise increase in number of parliament seats. I mean, that's one proposal. Can you please explain that?
Yeah. So what the government is offering as of now is the current strength of the Lok Sabha is 543. The government is proposing that this number will go up to 816, which roughly translates to a 50% increase of each state's current quota of seats in the Lok Sabha, except for those states and union territories which have only a single MP. So even a state like Tripura, which has two MPs, will get one more, which is 50%. A state like Uttar Pradesh, which has 80 MPs, will get 40 more, which is 50% of their current strength. That is the proposal. Now, the reason that the government is trying to bring in this kind of a thing, or at least that's what the government claims, is that the earlier route for delimitation was linked directly to population. And that itself would have run into trouble with parties from the south, because these are parties, including the DMK in Tamil Nadu, or the left parties in Kerala, the Congress, of course, across the country, uh, other regional parties in the south, who would have objected to this, saying that, look, population cannot be held against us, because we were the states that controlled our population, that
Right.
were able to do good family planning, unlike the north, where population explosion continues even today. So, are you penalizing us by reducing our share, our overall share, and rewarding those who were unable to do proper family plan, implement proper family planning and population control measures? So that would have been the normal delimitation route, where population would have been a major deciding factor of the number of seats each state gets. What the government is thus proposing now is, forget population. Let us just do a blanket, uniform 50% increase across all. So it's not like, we're denying a state parity in terms of the in terms of the percentage of seats that will go up. But, that itself is something that the opposition is now saying is very deceptive, because in any case, southern states have fewer seats. And so 50% of fewer seats will still lead to fewer seats, in the final scenario of 816.
Yeah.
And just to give you an example, say a state like Telangana, which has 17 seats at the moment, their share from 17 will go up, if you take the 50% formula, to 26 seats. Whereas Uttar Pradesh, which has 80 seats right now, goes up to 120. The difference between Uttar Pradesh and Telangana right now is of 63 seats. That difference goes up to 94 seats. So that's the scale that we're talking about. And in the overall scenario also, the five southern states, if we don't count in Orissa, we just count Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu. These states together, as per the 50% formula, will constitute only 195 seats. Whereas, just UP and Bihar together will have 180. So that's what the opposition and the southern parties are saying, that, this is putting the southern states on the political margins of representation.
Yeah. So suppose this arrangement, number of seats in UP Bihar will really zoom up. So the political
Absolutely.
power will be much, much more. But there are a number of other issues also linked to this, which we won't be dealing here about. Also, the economic issues, the finance commission, and the amount of funds each state receives, which is tied to population again. So we are not discussing that issue here right now, but we'll come back to our core issue. This proposal, I think, has got a pushback from at least Revant Reddy. He has spoken about it, the Chief Minister of Telangana, and he has pointed out perhaps that how this would hamper the interests of the southern state. And in a way, he's resonated the voice of other chief ministers. Earlier, MK Stalin spoke a while ago, about a year or 2 years ago, when the issue actually came up. So there seemed to be some kind of either a consensus building among the opposition leaders in these states, or these are very disjointed, nebulous thoughts even now.
I think, Srini, there is a consensus on opposing the delimitation part of it. No opposition party, let's be very clear, has objections to implementing women's reservation. All of them are very clear that the sooner it is done, the better. The objection is to the delimitation part of it. And that's why they're saying that there is no requirement for delimitation. Because the moment you bring in delimitation and you reconfigure the numbers, the southern states lose out. A natural fallout of that is, if you look at the political footprint of each party, it is in the north or in the Hindi belt that the BJP holds sway and has become increasingly, almost invincible over the last 12 years. So you're going to, the argument of the opposition is that you are going to reconfigure the numbers in a way that pushing the BJP out of power itself is going to become difficult. Because if you look at, a very basic north-south divide, you just take the 5 southern states and everything else you put as the north, including the states in the northeast, or states like Maharashtra and others. That itself forms a block of 471 seats if the numbers are increased as per this 50% formula. Whereas, with a 816 member house, the halfway mark to form a government would be only 408. So the opposition is saying that, the southern states with 195 MPs will make no difference at all, because 408 is the halfway mark. 471 is the number of seats that fall in the area where the BJP is very strong. And so you're doing it in a way that gives you predetermined results.
Yeah. No. Let's come to the other question, that even if delimitation is conducted, the fallouts of that, possible fallouts, let us discuss that. If, for argument's sake, if the number of seats are done the way Mr. Amit Shah has proposed, what happens to the principle which is what has forced all this, that each MP should have a limited amount of electorate in each assembly? Will there be a sudden zooming effect, and how would that affect the entire delimitation?
Most certainly. See, Srini, that is where the constitutional tenability of what the center is currently proposing will perhaps come into challenge. Because you have broadly 2 articles of the Constitution here that will come into play. Article 81 of the Constitution, which gives you a very basic formula of one person, one vote, one value, which basically means that the constitutional scheme is that every MP, barring the states which have a population of less than 6 million, every other state, the number of MPs you have should represent roughly the same proportion of population. So one MP, to say hypothetically 5 lakh voters or 10 lakh voters. Now, that in certain states, because of the difference in population, maybe, it may be 1 MP to 11 lakh or 1 MP to 9 lakh. But it can't be a situation where one state has 1 MP to 20 lakh people and another state has 1 MP to just 6 lakh people, right? So that basic principle of one person, one vote, one value cannot be violated is what the opposition is also claiming, and which could become a grounds for challenging, an amendment such as this to, in the Supreme Court. Because I'll give you in numerical terms, to break it down and make it a little easier for the viewers. Under the current scenario, because there has been a freeze on delimitation since 1976, almost 50 years, this Article 81 has anyway become a bit more skewed because population has changed differently in different states. As of now, you have 80 MPs in Uttar Pradesh. One member of parliament in Uttar Pradesh currently represents about 24 lakh people. Now compare that to Tamil Nadu, which has 39 seats currently. One MP in Tamil Nadu currently, if you break it down, represents a population of 18 lakh 49,000. Right? Now the difference between UP and Tamil Nadu at this point in time, is of one MP representing, from UP, representing 6,47,000 people more than what the MP from Tamil Nadu is representing. If the 50% formula that the government is proposing comes into play, the scale with which this would, increase is you will have a scenario where the MP from UP is going to represent 15 lakh people more than the MP from Tamil Nadu. That is
So,
going to be the scale of disparity.
sure. No, if this principle of one person, one vote, one value has to be maintained, then obviously it requires amendment, constitutional amendment. But
Certainly.
then, if it is challenged, can this government afford to get past that?
See, so that of course depends on how the courts, what view the courts take, because in the view of many legal experts, one person, one value, one vote should be part of the basic structure, and we know that the basic structure cannot be tinkered with. You have the option of delimitation, which is under Article 82, but that cannot alter the basic structure. That can't take away, that privilege. So it will be open to legal challenges.
Yeah. So let's come to one more issue before we wrap up quickly. There is the demand for 33% quota for women. That is quota within quota.
Right.
If you remember, it was first proposed perhaps 3 decades ago by Uma Bharati. And the last session in 2023, when the bill was being discussed, this was brought up by Kharge, Mallikarjun Kharge, the president of Congress party. When he was on the other side, he was actually, Congress was saying something else. Now they're actually backing this very strongly. Now, how will they sort out this issue? Whether this again will be taken up in some form, or, because if you see the sequence, it has to wait. So, how are they going to deal with this currently?
I think what the government is doing, by trying to link delimitation and implementation of women's reservation with the 2011 census and not the 2026-27 census, is to bypass the demand of a quota within quota. Because you'll only be able to introduce reservation for OBC women if you know the population of OBC women in each constituency, which is much like the SC/ST population and reservations based on that population in parliament. Now, 2011 census does not have caste data. that data will only come in 2027. So by saying that we're not going to take 2027 into account, but 2011 into account, when you don't have caste data, you nip the demand in the bud of a quota within quota for OBC women. And that's, I think, what the government is trying to do. This was a demand that actually first came from leaders like Sharad Yadav and Lalu Yadav and Mulayam Singh Yadav, who basically said that if women's reservation without a quota within quota is rolled out, you would have women only, what Sharad Yadav described as parkati mahila, women from the elite classes, forward classes, who will benefit from women's reservation, while backward caste women will be left out. And at that point in time, in fact, when the UPA government had this bill passed in Lok Sabha, in the Rajya Sabha, it could not be brought to Lok Sabha precisely because of this demand. And the Congress at that point did not support a quota within quota, which it has now accepted and said that, it is something that we back. But in the formula that the government is suggesting now, it would be very difficult to bring in a quota within quota.
So one final issue, again, there is no clarity on how this could be implemented. Will it be on a rotational basis, or will they be able to fix? I think which is difficult. Currently, I think it is done on a rotation basis for local body, the reservation for women. Is there any proposal, any discussion on this, or again another contentious area which is lying unattended?
Right. So that again is something that there's no clarity on, because there are two formulas that you can go by. Either you go by the formula that is currently applicable to the local bodies, where you essentially have women's reservation, which was introduced during the Rajiv Gandhi years, where the reserved seat for women is reserved on rotational basis. The reservation is done through lottery system, and it may change from election to election. The other is the formula you have for SC/ST reservation in parliament and state assemblies, which changes from delimitation to delimitation. Which means it's not rotational. So at least for 2 electoral cycles, it will remain the same. But the government hasn't said whether it wants a rotational thing or it wants, a more fixed scheme of things. There's no clarity as of now.
Thanks, Puneet, for your nice story and also describing the story in detail for our viewers. For more details, viewers can click the link which is available in the description box, and you can also scan the QR code which is available on the screen. Thank you so much.